Hello everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Jeff Pfeiffer and this is Upfront. Well, if you read the news or seen the news lately, you know there are many communities in our country where the relationships between the police, government, and minority communities is at an all-time low. It's marred by lack of communication and lack of trust. Well, my two guests today are trying to do something, at least in Longmont, to solve that situation. It is an outreach program where they walk into the communities, talk to people, and give them a voice and let them voice their objections or their opinions or their grievances. My guests have been in Longmont for a very, very long time. My first guest is Dan Benavidez. He's been in the community since 1960 as a businessman, as part of the government, as a mayor and city council. He also is an author of a book that is entitled For All the Wrong Reasons that you can find on Amazon. And it is a story, an autobiography of his travels as a Latino through America. My second guest has an extensive law enforcement career. He came to Longmont as chief of police in 1994 and was promoted, I think it's a promotion, to director of public safety in, what year was that? 2008, yeah. So gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
I want to start with you, Dan, and I want to do some housekeeping to begin with.
Okay.
I want to ask you, what is the Latino experience here in Longmont?
Well, you know, we've come a long way. Let me start off by saying that. But our Latino experience in Longmont, when I first got here, and through that we've just come, it's just amazing what we've come through. There was a time in our community, and that's certifiable, even when I got here, when we had people of color generally had to live on the east side of town. That's a known factor. We couldn't belong to the private clubs, Elks Club, Moose Club, those type of things. Now we can. There weren't any really people representing even the government. By that I mean elected officials locally. And I became the first person in the history of Longmont to get elected at large to the city council and mayor pro tem.
But give me a sense of what it's like today.
But during that entire process, even then, till all that I achieved, whatever that is, I didn't feel I belonged. I didn't feel that, accepted. And part of it has to do with our culture, the Latino culture. So even through all that, I'm already now starting to feel, because of this man, that I belong. Okay, but our Latino culture right now in the city of Longmont has changed drastically, massively over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Do they still feel isolated?
Very much so, because the majority of this community now is foreign born. Okay, they came here 30 years ago, whatever, Mexican, basically. 85% of the community is Mexican. And they have come from countries where there's a lot of corruption. There's no faith in anything. So we have basically, what I say in my mind, a circles of wagons mentality. Don't trust anybody. Okay. To this day. And that is why what we've been doing is so important. But yes.
You told me that 82.5% is foreign born.
That's correct.
How many of those are undocumented?
I have no idea. None whatsoever. And I don't even concentrate on that.
And you don't ask?
Don't ask. It makes no difference. Gotcha. And if that issue has to be resolved somewhere, it certainly should be resolved at a higher level. But no, we're all citizens here in the city of Longmont right now. Yeah. Well, citizens, we all belong here. And we need to feel we belong. Gotcha. And we'll talk about that.
Mike, how did this program start? How did you was it your brainchild? Was it Dan's brainchild?
It's his brainchild. It was Mike's.
Well, back in July of 2014, I decided I wanted to walk some neighborhoods in our community. And I specifically wanted to walk neighborhoods that were characterized by lower income, predominantly Spanish speaking, predominantly Latino, because I felt like perhaps they felt marginalized. Perhaps they felt like their voice wasn't heard. And I wasn't sure about the relationship that our public safety department had with these folks in these parts of our community. So in July of 14, I decided I wanted to walk those neighborhoods. And given that a lot of these neighborhoods might be predominantly Spanish speaking, I initially asked Dan Benavidez to accompany me. And so we started this back in July of 2014, and we've been walking neighborhoods just about every Sunday since then. We've walked approximately 50 neighborhoods, characterized mostly by those kinds of demographics that I just mentioned. And so that's how that started. We began to realize that there was a dynamic going on in these communities, a dynamic of belonging, in which people kind of felt like they belonged, but they still lived in these kind of container neighborhoods. And so Dan and I came up with this phrase called the belonging revolution. Because now what we're doing in our walks is we really want people to feel and believe as if they do belong. And this belonging piece is important, Jeff. It's very important, because just take your own personal example, and I would ask people who are watching this to think about what they belong to. One aspect of belonging is relational. I belong to something. And the other aspect of belonging is something belongs to me. It's one of ownership. And our thought is that if we can get people to feel like they belong to our community and that our community of Longmont belongs to them, they'll become investors. They'll become co-owners. They'll become people who want to make a difference in our community in ways perhaps they didn't think they could. So that's initially what started this, and that's what it's evolved to.
So what you basically do, the nuts and the bolts of this thing is the two of you go out on the weekends, predominantly Sunday, and then you just hit neighborhoods. You don't have appointments, correct?
No, we don't have appointments.
You just walk.
We just park our car and begin to walk the neighborhood, and we encounter people who are walking. They're just walking, out washing their car, working on their car, getting the Sunday morning newspaper, working in their yard, just out on their stoop. And so we're not bashful or shy when we see people. We approach them, yes. But we don't knock on doors, and we don't have appointments. And so these are all happenstance appointments or happenstance moments, and that's what occurs.
So when you meet these people for the first time, you obviously introduce yourselves, and you give your reasons for being there. And then is it a series of questions? Do you ask them, how's life going? Do you have any grievances? How's the police treating you?
Yeah,
is that what you do?
I'll let Dan help out with this too, but we really want to know what they feel about their neighborhood. How safe do they feel? How secure do they feel? How well do they know their neighbors? How do they feel about Longmont? Do they feel invited? Do they feel welcomed? Mm-hmm. Do they feel like they belong? In some instances, we ask people if they have felt discriminated against while they've lived here in Longmont. Certainly because I oversee public safety, I want to know how their contacts, if they've had any, how their interactions have gone with police or fire. But we also expand that to the entire city, all of city services. We've had elected officials walk with us. We've had the city manager walk with us. We've had county commissioners walk with us. And so we've expanded some of our questions to include the city, other city services, and the county. And then once those questions begin to engender stories and comments from people that can go anywhere. And people often tell us their life story, what's happened to them. They tell us what they're inspired by. They tell us their hopes. They tell us their fears. There's lots of laughter. Sometimes there's tears. People invite us into their homes. They give us things to eat. They introduce us to their family. And we, out of the 1,000+ people we have met over the last year plus, we've only had maybe 1 or 2 people who felt uncomfortable with this interaction. Most people are very eager to connect. They're willing to put things aside, shut off their cars, put down their rakes, whatever that might look like, to say, hey, let's talk. It's amazing how people really want to connect. That's what we're finding.
Yeah,
And Dan, I want to hear from you, because you're actually getting it directly, because a lot of these people speak broken or very little English.
That's true.
So they have to talk through you.
That's right.
What's the responses you're getting? What are you hearing them say out there in the community about Longmont and their general neighborhood?
Well, of interest also, almost a third of our population now is Latino in Longmont. Almost a third. So when we go into these neighborhoods, it's been so uplifting to me, because I'll approach them and say, ¿Cómo estás? How are you? And I'd like you to meet the chief of police or something.
Okay.
And at first, whoa, the chief? This is the chief, and the dialogue starts, and then pretty soon it just opens up. But what's so beautiful about what's going on, here we have people of power in our community. Powerful people, chief of police, county commissioners, city council people, mayor walk with us. And that's going right down where the people are at. And when that is so important within our Latino community, that they're recognized. They don't feel, first of all, like I say, they don't go to the meetings, they don't go to the council meetings, they don't go to community meetings, nothing. We tend to keep within ourselves and our familia. But here are these people, these powerful people, down there talking to them. And pretty soon they just burst out in big smiles. They literally do. Oh yeah, and they just start a dialogue with the chief and everything else, how they feel. And then with me, sometimes when I've conversed with them in Spanish directly, they're telling me, "Qué bueno es esto? How good is this? Yeah, estos hombres, these men, so much, look at that." And that's a chief. I said, "Yeah, that's a chief. And he has a heart this big. He had this heart this big to come down here with us." Honestly, that's a conversation that's going on.
So
right
I
now.
also want to say something too on that, Jeff. I think what we're experiencing. First of all, I'm a tall Anglo guy. Dan is not quite as tall brown guy.
If I was picking a basketball team, I'd pick you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and there's a lot of other teams we would pick Dan to be on too.
Yeah, obviously.
But on the other hand, here we are. You started off your monologue. You started off the show with issues around race. Well, here we are, two different races coming together into people's communities. And so we're somewhat symbolic of what can happen between races and among races. Dan and I are not only good friends. We're out here trying to actuate this belonging revolution, of which Dan is a belonging revolutionary. But what I hear also other people say is how proud they are of Dan, that he's willing to do what he's doing. And it actually gives them hope. And that Dan actually becomes a model for them in terms of what they might want to do or can do, or the voice they think they can have. Because the other thing that we're really trying to do is convince people that their voice really counts. Their voice just doesn't count, it's important. And so our community is complex, cities are complex, and we need everybody's voice. And so the other thing that we're doing is we're asking people, inviting people to become part of conversations that we're having around other community-wide issues like mental health or homelessness or addiction. People are excited to be asked about that. No one's ever asked these folks to be a part of something, and 80 to 90% of the people we're asking are saying, yes, I want to be involved. And the one thing that inspires them to do that is the fact that Dan Benavidez is out there in their community saying, if Dan can do this, so can I.
Right.
So Dan's been a great example for people.
Is there an offshoot here where if you look at recent history, you look at Ferguson, you look at Boston, if there was an incident that happened in Longmont, that there was prejudice or bigotry, either real or perceived, that you're trying to get the communication going before violence start, before property destruction, that the lines of communications, is this an offshoot of that too?
At some level, we started this before Ferguson. But there's a lot of common sense found in the idea that when people have good relationships, good connections, and good understanding, that if things that happen that don't go well, that within the context of those great relationships, things can get resolved differently than violence. I would say when you look at Ferguson, when you look at Baltimore, New York, where these things are happening, those relationships and connections aren't there. But they're very ripe for those connections. And I think that's where we're headed as a society. And we don't need, as police and fire, to be disconnected, or government to be disconnected from our community. And so the more connection and the better relationship we have, if things don't go well, just like any relationship, if things don't go well, if the relationship is good, the relationship can not only survive, but can resolve those things well. So that's what this is about too.
One of the criticisms of Ferguson is that the police department was not a mirror image of the community. Do you think that a police department should be or has to be a mirror image of the community itself?
I think mirror image has lots of dimensions to it. What we want to portray as a police department is that we care, that we want them to be involved, that our relationships with them are important. I think diversity is important. I think demographics is important. I think it's important that we reflect back who they are in terms of what our own staff looks like, how our own staff feels, our hearts, our souls, our minds. All those things play a part in terms of those kinds of connections. And I think ultimately what becomes important for people is, do you care about me? Am I important to you? Does my voice count? Is there a level playing field here? Do I have opportunity? Those are issues that are, I think, critically important to people that we're finding as we do these walks.
And when you're talking to the community, are you getting a sense that they feel discriminated against either by the police department or by the fire department or any aspect of government or the Caucasians that are in this community?
I'm glad you asked that question, okay? But and of interest too, as I get into this question, answering that, is the fact when we're there, I've had people there ask me in Spanish, you work for the city? I said, no, I don't. I'm just and that's important because it's not a government type project going down to talk to people. It's not structured over here. There's people who just care. Oh, es que bueno, no, it's just my friend. I'm with, okay, bueno. Okay. We ask that question almost 100% of the time with the people in our community, Latino. Do you feel discriminated? When you go to the stores, do you feel discriminated against? How do you feel? And honestly, no, we don't get any back there's discrimination at all. I haven't heard that.
We heard it from, I have to say, we've
person.
heard it from one person.
One person.
But that's 1 out of 1,000.
I was going to say, you've had 45 walks, correct? Where
Yeah,
you've done
one
this
person.
45, 50
But what I
walks.
did hear, believe it or not, was, as a matter of fact, recently, within the Latino community, someone says, yeah, we discriminate. What do you mean? Well, we amongst ourselves. No, I love Longmont.
Yeah.
I've had a person we talked to the other day who immigrated here from Peru. I don't remember when, 15, 20, 30 years ago.
15 years ago.
Somewhere in there.
Dave.
He loves it, Dave. And he loves it here. And we were talking to one guy the other day, he says, do you feel, no, he says, no, not at all. Love it here. But he said, there are discrimination. Well, ¿qué es eso? What is that? He said, well, within ourselves. You know, oh, you're from Durango. Oh, you're from here or there. You know, that type of thing. But no, what I found that made me feel so good after all these years of what we went through in this community, people feel they belong, especially when the chief's down there and a council person's down there talk with them, and they don't feel discrimination at all when they go into the stores. One case, I think it was
We had
once,
one case, yeah. Where
it says, yeah, I have been.
But you know, they've earned it too. Because not only there's been an assimilation, but they have earned the fact that I mean, feel no fear if I see a couple of Latino kids coming down the road at all.
right.
So they have earned it too, I think, that kind of respect and that kind of non-discriminatory activity. Would you not agree?
I agree.
Yeah. During these walks, have you changed any procedures in the police department from what you've learned?
You know, we're going to be having conversations around what public safety does differently in our community. You know, I'm one of 300 people in public safety, but in the not too distant future, we're going to be having all of our public safety personnel walking neighborhoods, parks, and business districts. We realize how important this is for all of us. And what I've learned, I mean, I've learned a lot of things. Like yesterday when we took our walk, we learned some things about someone not stopping, people not stopping at stop signs, or some speeding, or we had somebody say, well, we think there's some narcotics activity down the block. And so we take that information, we pass it along to our operations people. And so I'm getting a lot of that kind of information that flows back into our public safety department to go out and handle. And so when we hear those things, we'll go out and deal with those issues in our community. So that's coming from me though. But I would say the philosophical policy change that's happening and it will continue to happen is that our public safety personnel need to be in our neighborhoods, fire, police, our professional staff as well. And so we do that a lot. It's just that we're going to have to figure out how to carve time out of our days to make that a focus and a priority.
Well,
May I mention one thing?
sure,
Excuse me.
sure, absolutely.
But when we're down there also of importance is, guess what? The chief gives him his personal card, okay? Or if we've got a council member or mayor, they give him their card. That means something because it's just talk.
Sure.
If you have something, an issue you want to talk about, you call me. His personal card he gives them. That sits big time. I mean, that's really appreciated within our community.
Right.
It's not just talk. Here's my card.
Right.
Wow. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. I have one other question for you, Chief, and that is we were just talking, Dan and I were just talking about the percentages of Latinos and they're foreign born. And you've made mention that you're not asking people, are they documented, are they here legally?
We're not.
Are we a sanctuary or safe city? Is that what you would call Longmont, since we're not pushing that portion of it?
You know, I think that's a label that I think that has been politicized. We're not necessarily a sanctuary city for anyone, but we want people to feel like there's a sense of refuge and that they feel safe here. We don't care if you're white, Hispanic, African American, Asian, from Peru. We want everybody to feel safe. We want everybody to feel like there's a sense of sanctuary when they come into this community. In fact, one person actually talked to us about that in a very inspiring way on one of our walks one Sunday, when he says when he comes back into Longmont, all of the burdens that he has are lifted off because of the nature of this community. We hear that a lot. And so, but specifically in the context of being undocumented, frankly, we're not asking questions, and we don't care. And in my mind, everybody's a citizen and everybody has the right to belong. We see a lot of people who are trying to do great things for their families, trying to do great things for their community. They're hardworking, they're law-abiding, they want to be a part of something bigger, and they're important. Every person in this community is important. We spent quite a bit of time at this place called Casa de la Esperanza. It's migrant housing located in the south end of Longmont. We spent 3 nights there. And one of our goals and purposes was to get people to feel like they belonged and that there was open communication, that their voice counted. And there may have been a number of those folks who were, quote, undocumented. But I have to say that's not the issue.
That's not a question.
Not a
question.
question.
That's
Not
not
an
an
issue.
issue.
Yeah.
By the way, while we were there, this man, there was 50 people in the room maybe, and they usually have gather with the families to have food. And Mike said, I'd like to maybe have, chili and stuff. And what they said, no, we'd rather have pizza. You know what he did out of his own pocket? He must have bought 18 or 20 pizzas for those people that evening. And we had a feast together.
Yeah, and thanks. It was no big deal. I was hoping for some really good, well-cooked Mexican food, but no, they wanted pizza, so we went out and bought pizza, and we had a great time. We had a great time.
We did.
The knock on the Latino community that I've heard at times is that they come here from Mexico, they work here for the job, they come here for the job, they're sending money back, they don't want to assimilate, they rather celebrate Cinco de Mayo than the 4th of July, and that they want to stay in their own community. I'm kind of hearing you say that that's a misperception, that in fact they do want to assimilate. Talk to me about that.
They do very much want to assimilate. And by the way, it's not Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo started by one of my heroes in California. But it's 16 de septiembre, the 16th of September. But anyway, set that aside. They definitely want to belong here. They definitely love it here. They want to assimilate.
So they're staying?
They're staying.
Okay, so
When
it's
I
not
asked him,
coming,
if
getting
you had a
jobs,
chance-
sending money back
no,
to Mexico.
he says,
and then
would you
just
like to go?
leaving.
No, this is my home. Do you love it here? Yes. Do you feel good here? Yes, I do. Honestly, so much so that Michael asked him, will you help me if we need to have input on different things in our community? Yes. They give him their names, their phone numbers to him. They volunteer, and he takes all this stuff down. If you didn't care enough about your community and want to belong here, do you think you'd do that? No,
Yeah.
but they do. Am I right, Mike?
No, you're absolutely right.
They love it here, literally. We've had people who come here, Mexican people came here from St. Louis, from Denver, said, oh, I love Longmont. I want to stay here forever. This is my home.
I want you both to answer this question, and that is that one of the problems that I always perceived as being is that because they were so isolated, that the Latino community is isolated, that they failed to report crimes even when they were victims of that crime. Do you find that this program is going to help you in that regard? Do you think that they will open up and then start reporting some of the crimes that they're victims of?
Well, let me just start off by talking about Casa de la Esperanza. One of the requests that they made was that they have their own Spanish-speaking police officer in their little neighborhood, and so we're accommodating that. But these are folks who are saying we want police officers in our neighborhood so that we can connect, we can relate, we can tell our stories, we can say when we're victims. And so not reporting a crime, I don't think is an issue of race as much as it's an issue of, is it important enough, or is it something the police can deal with? We're not finding that that's basically a factor of race as much as it is a factor of is it important enough even to report? And so we're not seeing that. And but I will say, Jeff, that any connection and relationship that we're developing in this belonging revolution probably opens doors, makes us seem more accessible. The invitation seems to be there. Hey, if I can talk to Dan and Mike, I can report things as well, because they do tell us things. They do tell us right there on the spot what they're seeing in their neighborhood, or what they've been potentially a victim of, or things that have happened. So if they're willing to talk to us, that opens doors.
Right. Absolutely, you know, and again, what I find of importance is we realize within our thing, we break the law, we have to pay the price. We understand that. So that's fully. And now, if they didn't want to report, why would it be like the other day when we're there and they're telling the chief, well, there's a drug thing going down. Well, where is that? Well, right, I think they even give you an address. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, they did.
And how do you know it's going? Because I see packs, stuff like that. If they didn't want to report, do you think they would do that?
I understand.
So that's the point. No, there's not a problem with reporting.
So the one thing I want to make clear on, though, Jeff, this just isn't a belonging revolution for our Latino
No, it's for
population.
the whole community.
It's for everybody, and we're walking neighborhoods too we're going to start walking a lot more neighborhoods that are more white or more Anglo, that have more wealth attached to them. It's just that we started off in these neighborhoods, and so that's our story to date. But our intentions are to walk every single neighborhood in this community. The belonging revolution, it goes to everybody. We find that people being isolated or disconnected is a condition of modern living. Even in our wealthy, gated neighborhoods, people feel disconnected and isolated. And we want folks to feel like and believe that they belong there too.
Boy, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I wanted to go with my next number of questions, and that is that you're expanding this, as you said, in the neighborhood A, but aren't you giving some talks to other police chiefs, to other government officials, to try to show them what you're doing and see if you can expand the program to other communities?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes.
Dan. Go ahead.
Well, I was really honored and surprised, okay, if you will, July, I think it was, beginning of July 10th or somewhere, when I got a call from Chief Butler and saying, you know, there's having a big meeting of police chiefs, PERF it's called, professional.
The Police Executive Research Forum, PERF.
In Washington, D.C., and it's a police chief from all over the country are coming there. And would you accompany me so we can tell what we're doing here? And I was just thrilled. Yes, of course. And so we went back to Washington, D.C., and we met. There must have been 160, 165, I don't know, police chiefs there. There was a member from the White House, right from the White House was there, a person from the Department of Justice, representative, people from all over. And we told what we were doing here in Longmont to them. And I've been communicating with a lot of them from Kansas City to all over about what we're doing here. And I send a lot of these people the same thing I've been sending to you sometimes, about our walks and photos and everything.
Right.
So this is, and not only that, in our own state and county, right over here in Boulder, fill them in, chiefs there, you know, the police. And as a result of what we're doing, our county commissioners now want to walk with us. They're walking with us. So yes, this is being spread all over.
And they are receptive. You're
Yeah,
finding
you know, I had the opportunity to speak to about 70 state police chiefs, and I went back to the same conference, of course, with Dan, and got to tell our story as well back there. We are inviting police chiefs from all over the country to start walking what they consider their challenging neighborhoods, and to get their police and public safety personnel out into the neighborhoods. And it's not just a question of building trust and relationships, that's important, but we also think that public safety is a legitimate platform to build what we call social capital, to invite people into the conversations, to be more engaged and involved in what's going on. And so when a police officer or firefighter asks you, hey, you want to be more involved in what's going on in our community, people are pretty likely to say yes, especially when you're doing it in their living rooms or in their front lawns. So we're inviting police chiefs to do that all over the country.
I'm sorry, we are out of time. I wish we had more time to talk about this. We can maybe have you back, and after you've done some more walks, and see what's going on. Well, that's it for this show. I want to thank Mike and Dan for coming on the program. Very interesting. Thanks for volunteering your time. This seems like a worthwhile program. Well, that's it. You've been watching Upfront on Channel 8. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.